I'm Mike Naso from Internet Partnership Radio with the latest on the tropics. We have a new tropical depression and of course Tropical Storm Ernesto spinning in the Atlantic Basin. As we are now in early August, hurricane season 2012 heating up. There is Ernesto looking much better organized than 24 hours ago, when it was looking better organized than 24 hours prior to that. So the general thinking now is, will Ernesto survive? It's looking likely that it will, and take a track right through the Caribbean up in the general direction of the Yucatan Peninsula and the Gulf of Mexico. This one's going to have to be watched very carefully indeed, because it is forecast to become a potent hurricane. You can see we have this large upper level low out here in the western Caribbean, fueling thunderstorms here over the Bahamas. A very rainy, muggy situation there, and we're going to watch that as well. Has a low chance for development at this point in time. Here's the latest on Tropical Storm Ernesto as of 11 p.m. Eastern Time. It was at 13.9 north, 65.6 west. Winds were still at 50, gusting to 65. It's moving west at 18, so it has slowed down its forward progress a little bit. 1,003 millibars, but nonetheless still only a moderate tropical storm, but it is expected to slowly strengthen, and by the time we get towards Monday morning be becoming a hurricane here just south of the Cayman Islands, and then slowing down more and beginning that bend off towards the west-northwest. And it is forecast to strengthen to a strong Category 1 hurricane Tuesday night prior to landfall on the Yucatan, and be a minimal Category 1 hurricane entering the Gulf of Mexico on Wednesday night. But again, there is a lot of uncertainty. It could of course move much further to the north and head towards western Cuba. It could continue straight west and be weaker and go right into Central America and dissipate. However, that scenario is looking less likely through time. Regardless, Jamaica is the first place to want to watch this carefully. We could see tropical storm watches and warnings, even hurricane watches, issued if Ernesto strengthens further prior to the longitude of the island of Jamaica. Now here's the latest model guidance, and you can see it's tightly clustered at first, generally south of Jamaica, but then they begin to diverge. Some of the models keep Ernesto weaker and don't really strengthen it at all. If anything, they weaken it and move it almost straight west with the flow for a weaker system. However, others strengthen it and move it more north, and the consensus here is that Ernesto will gradually bend to the north as the ridging over the Gulf weakens as a trough comes by. That weakness draws the system further into the Gulf of Mexico. You can see the UK Met here would be a bit too far to the north, but something along the lines of the Yucatan Channel, and then a bend towards the west. What that model's showing, I'll show you a few more of them in just a second. First, let's take a look at Ernesto on the satellite imagery, just to give you some idea of what the system's doing at this point in time. And you can see it is much better defined than earlier. Has a bursting CDO, is expanding outflow on the western side of the circulation, and the wind shear is much lower than before, and it continues to move slower than it was 24 hours ago. Here's another look at the system from the unenhanced infrared, and clearly at the beginning of this loop it did not look nearly as good as it does now with that bursting convection, and this is all forecast to move in this general direction over the next 2 days or so. And so by the time the work week begins, we should have Hurricane Ernesto in the western Caribbean. That is the it looks like what we're looking like right now as far as intensification is concerned. Now here's the HWRF model, and you can see it doesn't do much with Ernesto, keeps it weak south of Jamaica, but then it begins to make it a hurricane here in the Gulf of Mexico, generally in the direction of the South Texas coast, northern Mexico. This is 126 hours out. And in contrast to that, the GFS model, which of course performed brilliantly with Tropical Storm Debbie, keeps Ernesto on almost a straight west course, although does show some intensification there in the Bay of Campeche. Also note it dissipates the system that is under depression out there and then develops another one off Africa in 5 days. But that track with Ernesto is less likely because the system is organized and it's August and the waters are hot and the wind shear is low, and there is no real reason why Ernesto will not intensify. And if it does, obviously a due west track as a weak system would not be in the cards. Now here was the wind shear from 24 hours ago. You can see it was decreasing, and Ernesto was heading here into the Windward Islands. As I flipped this to this point in time, clearly you can see Tropical Storm Ernesto is in a much better environment for intensification wind shear wise, and even as it pulls a little bit more to the west-northwest, conditions should only get better. And then in the Gulf, it appears as though wind shear will also be favorable, at least in the short term, for strengthening, so shear won't be a problem. And in the Western Caribbean in August, with those waters, the moisture, there is no reason why, apparent reason that is, that Ernesto won't become a hurricane and be intensifying. And that's why these models are a little bit less believable that continue the system straight west into land weaker, unless Ernesto still falls apart, which is still a possibility, but less likely. We will be looking at a strengthening hurricane in the Western Caribbean in just a couple of days. Now we do have Tropical Depression 6 as of 11 p.m. It was at 13.8 north, 27.8 west. It was moving west-northwest at 16, winds 35, and it is forecast to become Tropical Storm Florence and then weaken and dissipate, and the remnant low by midweek should be whatever's left of it spinning straight west in the flow for a weaker system, as mentioned before, because there is a lot of unfavorable trophiness in the central Atlantic that will probably end this thing, but not before it becomes a tropical storm, it looks like. And this wave over Africa is looking much better defined than it had been, and if this comes off, this could be our next system as well. So in the final analysis, we're watching Ernesto very carefully, as it is forecast to become a hurricane and take a track somewhere like that, generally towards the Gulf of Mexico. Whether or not that's further south, if it dissipates, still an opportunity for that, but that window is rapidly closing. As you look at that satellite, you can see as time goes by, the system continues to look more and more formidable in its own right. And then we will watch our depression likely become Tropical Storm Florence and likely dissipate in a few days, but nonetheless hurricane season 2012 continues to spin on, and we will continue to watch it here at IPR. I'm Mike Naso. I will see you all next time.